Elena Vasquez stood in the center of the great chamber, feeling very small. The Galactic Council's meeting hall was enormous. Hundreds of seats rose up in circles around her, filled with beings from across the galaxy. Some looked almost human. Others were so strange that Elena had to stop herself from staring. 3 days ago, humanity had officially joined the Galactic Council. It was supposed to be a great honor. Earth's leaders had celebrated. The news showed happy crowds in every major city. Finally, humanity was part of something bigger. Now, Elena wasn't so sure it was good news. The humans want 12 star systems, announced High Chancellor Zeth. He was a Zephyrian, made of what looked like living crystal. When he spoke, his voice sounded like rocks grinding together. 12 systems, for a species that has barely left their home star. Laughter filled the chamber. Elena had learned to recognize the sounds different species made when they found something funny. The Karathi flashed bright colors on their skin. The gas-being Etherians made their bodies sparkle. Even the robot-like mechanics clicked in patterns that meant amusement. Elena kept her face calm, but inside she felt angry and embarrassed. Earth had asked for 12 systems because they needed room to grow. Humanity's population was growing fast. They needed new worlds to live on, new resources to use. It seemed reasonable. Apparently, the rest of the galaxy disagreed. "Let me understand this correctly," said War Marshal Crix of the Korathi. His crest flared bright red, which Elena knew meant he was either angry or amused. "The humans have been in space for less than 200 years. They have visited maybe 20 star systems, and now they want to own 12 of them?" More laughter. Elena noticed that some of the smaller species weren't laughing. The delegates from worlds that had only recently joined the council looked uncomfortable. They remembered being new and asking for help. But the big powers, the species that controlled hundreds of worlds and had been traveling between stars for thousands of years, found humanity's request hilarious. "Perhaps the humans don't understand how this works," said Counselor Vex of the Trade Federation. "New species, start small. You prove yourselves worthy. You show that you can handle responsibility. Then, maybe after a few hundred years, you get more territory." Elena finally spoke. "Humanity understands the process, Counselor. We also understand our needs. Our home system is becoming crowded. We have the technology to manage new colonies. We have shown peaceful intentions with all species we have met." "Peaceful intentions," repeated Chancellor Zeth, and somehow made it sound like a joke. "Yes, we have seen human, peaceful intentions. You arrive in a system and immediately start building things. You set up trade stations without asking permission. You modify local equipment to make it work better. Very peaceful." Elena felt her cheeks get hot. "We were trying to help. Every modification we made improved efficiency. Every trade station we built increased commerce for local species. We thought cooperation was valued here." "Cooperation, yes," said Counselor Vex. "But cooperation means following the rules. It means asking before you act. It means understanding your place." "And where exactly is humanity's place?" Elena asked. The silence that followed was not comfortable. Elena could feel hundreds of alien eyes watching her. Some looked amused. Others looked annoyed. A few looked almost sorry for her. Chancellor Zeth's crystal body brightened, which Elena had learned meant he was about to make an important announcement. "Humanity's place is where the Council decides it should be. You are new here. You are small. You control 3 worlds and think you deserve 12. This shows that humans do not understand their position in the galaxy." "We understand perfectly," Elena said quietly. "We understand that power decides who gets what. We understand that being new means being treated like children. We understand that asking politely gets you nothing." War Marshal Crix's crest turned bright orange, which meant surprise. "You sound angry, human. This is not how diplomacy works." "This isn't diplomacy," Elena replied. Diplomacy is when both sides negotiate in good faith. This is just you telling us what you've already decided. Chancellor Zeth made a sound like breaking glass, which was Zephyrian laughter. The human learns quickly. Yes, we have already decided. Earth will keep its 3 colony worlds. No more. You will remain in your small corner of space until you prove you deserve better. And how exactly do we prove that? Elena asked. Time will tell, said Counselor Vex. Perhaps in a century or two, when you have shown proper respect for Council authority, we will consider expanding your territory. The vote was quick. Every major species voted to deny humanity's request. The smaller species either voted with the majority or abstained. No one wanted to anger the powers that controlled the galaxy. Elena listened to the final tally with a face that showed nothing. Inside, she was thinking fast. She had expected this outcome. Earth's leaders had expected it too. That's why they had sent her with very specific instructions. Humanity thanks the Council for its consideration, she said when the vote was finished. We respect your decision and will respond accordingly. Something in her voice made a few delegates look at her more carefully. War Marshal Crix's crest flickered between colors, showing confusion. Even Chancellor Zeth seemed to pause, as if he had heard something unexpected, but Elena was already walking toward the chamber's exit. She had a message to send to Earth. A very short message that would set many things in motion. As she reached the door, she heard Counselor Vex call out, "We hope humanity will learn to appreciate the wisdom of the Council's guidance." Elena stopped and turned back. For just a moment, she let them see what she really thought of their wisdom. "Oh, we will," she said. "I promise you that." Then she was gone, leaving behind a chamber full of aliens who thought they had just put humanity in its place. They had no idea what they had actually done. Station Master Volk woke up to alarms screaming through Trade Station Beta 7. As a member of the hegemony species, Volk didn't sleep the way humans did. Instead, he went into a rest cycle where part of his brain stayed alert. The alarms pulled him back to full consciousness instantly. "What's the emergency?" He growled into his communicator, his 3 arms already reaching for different control panels. "Sir, it's the human ships," came the voice of his assistant, Jorik. "They're gone." "Gone? What do you mean gone? Define gone." "Gone as in not here anymore, sir. All 7 human merchant vessels that were docked yesterday have disappeared. No departure logs, no customs clearances, no sensor traces. They're just not here." Volk's primary eyes focused, while his secondary eyes kept monitoring his screens. This made no sense. Ships didn't just disappear, especially not human ships, which were always very careful about following proper procedures. He made his way to the docking control center, his heavy footsteps echoing through the station's corridors. Beta 7 was a major trade hub, serving dozens of species in the Centauri Drift. Ships came and went constantly, but they always followed protocol. "Show me the logs," Volk ordered when he reached the control center. Jorik, a nervous young hegemony technician, pulled up the departure records on the main screen. "Look at this, sir. Yesterday at 23:47, all 7 human ships were docked and secure. Their crews had signed in for extended shore leave. Today at 6, they were gone. No entries between those times." Volk studied the data with growing confusion. The humans had been regular visitors to Beta 7 for over a year. They brought rare metals from the inner systems and traded them for exotic gases that could only be harvested near certain types of stars. It was profitable business for everyone involved. "Try contacting their trade coordinator," Volk ordered. Jorik's fingers danced over his console. After a moment, he frowned. "I'm getting a response, sir, but it's just an automated message." The message played through the station's speakers. "Thank you for your business. Contract terminated. All trade agreements with this station are now void. We wish you success in your future endeavors." The voice was polite, professional, and completely final. Volk's 3 arms crossed over his chest, a sign of deep thought among his people. Run a full station scan. Check every docking bay, every maintenance tunnel, every cargo hold. Maybe they moved their ships for some reason. But even as he gave the order, Volk knew they wouldn't find anything. The humans were gone. Across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out on dozens of worlds and stations. On Pharos IV, engineering supervisor Kala arrived at the orbital shipyard construction site to find it empty. The massive project that had been bustling with human workers for 6 months now showed no signs of life. The construction equipment was still there, powered down but undamaged. The half-finished shipyard sections floated in perfect formation, but every human engineer, worker, and supervisor had vanished. Kala tried to access the construction computers, but found that all the command codes had been changed. The human project leader, a cheerful woman named Sarah Chen, had always been available for questions. Now her office was empty, her personal belongings gone, as if she had never been there. The automated systems were still running perfectly. Life support, artificial gravity, structural integrity, everything was functioning normally. But the beings who had designed and built these systems had disappeared like ghosts. Captain Nexar of the Korathi Defense Fleet faced a different but equally disturbing situation. For months, human exploration ships had been mapping the dangerous void sectors for the Council's Navigation Guild. These were regions of space filled with quantum storms and gravitational anomalies that made normal navigation impossible. The human ships had special equipment that could handle these conditions. More importantly, they had crews that seemed to enjoy the challenge of mapping dangerous territory. Nexar had always respected their skill, even if he found their cheerful attitude in the face of danger somewhat unsettling. Now, when he tried to contact the human exploration fleet, he got nothing but empty space. The quantum communication relays that the humans had installed throughout the void sectors were still functioning perfectly. Nexar's messages were being routed and transmitted without any problems, but there was no one on the other end to receive them. Computer, show me the last known positions of all human exploration vessels. Nexar ordered from his ship's bridge. The tactical display showed 17 different locations spread across 3 sectors. Yesterday, those positions had been occupied by human ships. Today, they showed nothing but empty space and functioning communication relays. Nexar's tactical officer, a young Korathi named Zix, looked up from his console. "Sir, I'm detecting no debris, no energy signatures, no signs of battle or distress." All at once? According to the relay timestamps, yes, sir. Every human ship in the void sectors departed within a 6-hour window. No distress calls, no emergency beacons, no communication with Fleet Command. Nexar's crest shifted to a worried blue pattern. The human ships hadn't just been mapping the void sectors. They had been the only reliable way to navigate through them. Without human guidance, the Korathi Defense Fleet's planned expansion into those regions would have to be postponed indefinitely. The pattern continued across dozens of worlds. Human research teams abandoned their projects halfway through important discoveries. Human medical staff left their posts at remote hospitals, leaving behind patients who depended on human-developed treatments. Human security contractors guarding dangerous mining operations packed up their equipment and departed without explanation. On every world, in every situation, the message was the same: polite, professional, and final. Contracts terminated. Services no longer available. Thank you for your understanding. By the end of the day, reports were flooding into the Galactic Council. Every human outside the Sol system had vanished. Not fled in panic, not been recalled in anger. Simply withdrawn. Elena Vasquez, still on Nexus Prime as Earth's ambassador, received dozens of urgent communications. Station masters demanding explanations. Military commanders asking about human obligations. Trade officials wondering about broken contracts. Her responses were always the same: Humanity is simply following the Council's wisdom in restricting us to our home system. We wouldn't want to overstep our bounds. But even as she sent these polite replies, Elena couldn't help but smile slightly. The galaxy was about to learn something very important about humanity. They were about to learn what happened when you took humans for granted. Director Yalis of Kepler 442b mining colony noticed the problem on a Tuesday morning. The atmospheric processors that kept the colony's air breathable had begun showing warning lights. Nothing serious at first, just minor efficiency drops and small system fluctuations. By Thursday, the warnings had become alarms. "I don't understand it," Chief Engineer Breck told Yalis as they stood in the main processing center. Breck was a hegemony engineer with over 30 years of experience. "These systems were running perfectly last week. Now, they're failing in ways I've never seen." Yalis studied the readouts on the main control panel. The atmospheric processors were massive machines that converted the planet's toxic atmosphere into something the mixed species colony could breathe. They had been running smoothly for 3 years. "When did the efficiency upgrades get installed?" Yalis asked. "About 6 months ago. The human engineering team said they could improve our output by 15%. They were right. We've been running better than ever since then. Show me the upgrade specifications." Breck's face fell. "That's the problem, Director. The humans didn't just upgrade our existing systems. They integrated their improvements so deeply that we can't separate them. Our processors aren't just running better, they're dependent on the human modifications to function at all." Yalis felt a cold sensation in his chest. "Are you telling me that our life support systems won't work without human maintenance? Worse than that. They won't work without human access codes. The modifications require daily calibration, using algorithms that only the human engineers understood. We've been trying to figure out the system for 3 days, but it's beyond our comprehension." Yalis looked around the processing center. 2,000 colonists lived on Kepler 442b. Without the atmospheric processors, they had maybe 2 weeks of breathable air in the emergency reserves. "Try contacting the human engineering team," he ordered. Breck shook his head sadly. "I've been trying since Monday. All I get is an automated message saying their services are no longer available." Similar conversations were happening across the galaxy. On trade routes that had become essential to dozens of worlds, shipping companies discovered that human merchants had been filling crucial gaps in the supply chain. It wasn't obvious at first. Humans had never been the biggest or most prominent traders, but they had quietly taken on the jobs that other species couldn't or wouldn't do. Transporting medical supplies through pirate-infested systems? Humans had volunteered, saying their ships were fast enough to outrun trouble. Carrying rare minerals between species that refused to trade directly with each other? Humans had offered to serve as neutral middlemen, taking only small profits for their trouble. Maintaining communication relays in star systems too dangerous for permanent stations? Humans had said they enjoyed the challenge. Now those supply lines were broken. Trade routes that had operated smoothly for months suddenly faced critical shortages. The Andorian Confederation couldn't get the quantum crystals they needed for their power grids. The Tau Ceti Alliance discovered that their food production depended on agricultural supplements that only humans knew how to synthesize. War Marshal Crix of the Korathi faced an even more serious problem. His people's great war fleet, the pride of their military tradition, was being forced to abandon entire sectors of space. "Explain this to me again," Crix ordered his navigation officer as they stood on the bridge of the flagship Dominator. "Sir, the quantum storms in the Maelstrom sector have been getting worse for weeks. Our ships can't navigate through them safely anymore. We've been operating in the Maelstrom sector for 6 months without problems." "Yes, sir. But we've been following navigation data provided by human survey ships. They were updating our star charts daily, providing safe passage routes through the quantum disturbances. Without their data, the sector is impassable." Crix's crest flashed angry red. "Are you telling me that the mighty Korathi warfleet can't navigate space without human help?" The navigation officer looked uncomfortable. The humans have technology we don't fully understand, sir. Their quantum sensors can predict storm patterns days in advance. Our equipment can barely detect the storms when we're already inside them. Then use our own sensors. We tried, sir. Yesterday we lost a patrol ship to a quantum storm that our sensors didn't detect until it was too late. The humans would have warned us about that storm 3 days ago. Crick stared at the star charts displayed on the main screen. Red zones marked areas too dangerous for Korathi ships to enter. Those zones had been green just last week when human survey data was available. His war fleet, designed to project power across the galaxy, was being forced to retreat because they couldn't safely navigate the very space they were supposed to control. At the Galactic Council headquarters on Nexus Prime, emergency meetings had been called every day for a week. Delegate after delegate brought reports of systems failing, supply chains breaking, and critical services disappearing. Chancellor Zeth stood at the center of the great chamber, his crystal body dim with what humans would have recognized as exhaustion. Let me make sure I understand the situation. The humans have withdrawn all of their people from Council space. This withdrawal has caused disruptions across 17 sectors. Disruptions? Councillor Vex of the Trade Federation sounded incredulous. Chancellor, this is a disaster. 3 of my member worlds are facing critical shortages. The hegemony has reported power grid failures on a dozen planets. The Korathi military has been forced to abandon 2 entire sectors. Surely these are temporary problems, said another delegate. Other species can replace human services. With what? Vex demanded. The humans weren't just providing services. They were providing services that no one else wanted to do, or could do as well. Who's going to navigate the quantum storm regions? Who's going to transport medical supplies through pirate space? Who's going to maintain the deep space sensor arrays that keep us safe from external threats? An uncomfortable silence filled the chamber. Everyone was beginning to understand what they had lost when humanity withdrew. Elena Vasquez sat in the observer section, watching the debates with calm attention. She had received dozens of urgent messages from council members over the past week, all asking the same basic question. What would it take to bring humanity back? Her answers had been polite but unhelpful. Humanity was simply following council guidance. Earth had no desire to overstep its bounds. Perhaps other species could handle the responsibilities that humans had previously managed. Chancellor Zeth's voice interrupted her thoughts. Ambassador Vasquez, the Council would like to formally request Earth's return to galactic cooperation. Elena stood slowly. I appreciate the Council's interest, Chancellor. However, Earth is simply following your previous guidance. You made it clear that humanity should remain in its home system until we prove ourselves worthy of greater responsibilities. The situation has changed, Zeth said urgently. Has it? Elena asked. What exactly has changed? A week ago, the Council told humanity that we were too small, too new, and too presumptuous to deserve expanded territory. Are we suddenly larger, older, more humble? The chamber fell silent. Every delegate understood the trap they had created for themselves. They had dismissed humanity as insignificant, only to discover that the things they considered insignificant were actually essential. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike anything in the organization's 1,000-year history. Delegates who normally spoke in measured, diplomatic tones now shouted across the chamber. Species that had maintained dignified silence for centuries demanded immediate action. Chancellor Zeth stood at the center of the chaos, his crystal body flickering with stress patterns that most species had never seen before. Reports kept streaming in from across the galaxy, each one worse than the last. The Andromedans have lost contact with their deep space monitoring stations, announced Councillor Vex, reading from a datapad that trembled in his hands. Without human-maintained quantum resonators, they can't detect incoming threats from outside the galaxy. The Tau Ceti medical facilities are reporting critical shortages, added another delegate. Apparently, Several essential medicines can only be synthesized using processes that humans developed. Other species can't replicate the work. War Marshal Crix of the Korathi stood up, his crest flashing angry red. 3 of my battle groups have been forced to retreat from their patrol zones. The quantum storm navigation that humans provided isn't just helpful. It's absolutely necessary for safe travel in 17 different sectors. How is this possible? Demanded Delegate Sarn of the Machine Collective. Our analysis indicated that human contributions to galactic civilization were minimal. Your analysis was wrong, said a quiet voice from the back of the chamber. All eyes turned to Representative Mira of the Centauri Republic, one of the smaller council members. My people have been trading with humans for 2 years. We thought they were just another minor species, but they've been quietly solving problems that none of us even realized existed. She stood up, her small form barely visible in the enormous chamber. Last month, our agricultural stations were hit by a plague that should have destroyed our food supply. Human scientists appeared within days with a solution. They didn't ask for payment, or territory, or special treatment. They just fixed the problem and left. That's exactly what they did everywhere, said Counselor Vex, suddenly understanding. They never demanded credit or recognition. They just made things work better wherever they went. Chancellor Zeth's voice echoed through the chamber. How many critical systems are currently dependent on human maintenance or technology? The silence that followed was terrifying. No one had an exact count because no one had been paying attention. Humans had been so quiet, so helpful, so undemanding, that their contributions had become invisible. Conservative estimate? Counselor Vex said finally. At least 40% of our interstellar infrastructure has some level of human involvement. Transport networks, communication systems, power grids, defense networks, medical facilities, they're everywhere. This is unacceptable, growled War Marshal Crix. No single species should have such influence over galactic infrastructure. But they do, Mira said simply, and now they're gone. The chamber erupted in arguments again. Some delegates demanded that humanity be forced to return. Others suggested that Earth should be blockaded until they agreed to restore their services. A few even proposed military action. Chancellor Zeth let the arguments continue for several minutes before calling for order. When the chamber was quiet, he spoke in a voice that carried the weight of desperation. Ambassador Vasquez, the Galactic Council formally requests Earth's immediate return to galactic society. Elena stood slowly. She had been watching the debates with the same calm expression she had maintained for weeks. Around her, hundreds of alien eyes focused on her words. I appreciate the Council's request, Chancellor. We are prepared to offer significant concessions. Zeth continued quickly. 20 star systems instead of the 12 you originally requested. Full Council voting rights. Access to the Forbidden Archives. Preferential trade status. 30 systems, interrupted Counselor Vex. My people will support a grant of 30 systems. 50, said another delegate. 50 systems and full military alliance status, offered War Marshal Crix, his pride clearly struggling with his desperation. Elena listened to the increasingly frantic offers without changing expression. When the bidding finally stopped, she spoke in the same diplomatic tone she had used throughout the crisis. The Council's generosity is noted and appreciated. However, I must remind you that Earth is simply following the wisdom of your previous guidance. Previous guidance can be changed, Zeth said urgently. The Council recognizes that our earlier assessment of humanity's place in galactic society may have been incomplete. Incomplete? Wrong, Mira said bluntly from her seat. Our assessment was completely wrong. We treated you like children when you were actually the adults in the room. Elena finally allowed a small smile. Representative Mira speaks honestly, but the Council has made its position clear regarding humanity's place in the galaxy. We belong in the Sol system. We are simply following your wise guidance. The guidance has changed. Zeth's crystal body brightened with desperation. The Council now recognizes humanity's valuable contributions to galactic civilization. We formally request your return. 1. And what guarantee does Earth have that the Council's position won't change again? Elena asked. What happens when you decide that humanity is once again overreaching? Do we get dismissed again? Why? The question hung in the air like a poison cloud. Every delegate understood the problem. They had treated humanity poorly when they thought humans were weak. Now that they knew humanity was essential, they wanted them back. But why should humanity trust them? We could draft a formal treaty, suggested Councillor Vex. Legal guarantees of humanity's rights and territory. Treaties can be revoked, Elena replied. Votes can be changed. What's to stop the Council from deciding in 50 years that humanity has become too powerful and needs to be restricted again? War Marshal Crix stood up, his crest now flickering between colors in a pattern that indicated deep thought. You're saying that trust, once broken, cannot be easily repaired. I'm saying that actions have consequences, Elena said. The Council made it clear that humanity's contributions were not valued, that our ambitions were unreasonable, that our place was to remain small and quiet and grateful for whatever scraps we were allowed. She gestured around the chamber. Now you want us back because you've discovered that those contributions you dismissed were actually essential. But what you're offering is still based on what you need from us, not on any respect for what we want for ourselves. What do you want? Asked Chancellor Zeth. Elena was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice carried a finality that made several delegates shiver. Humanity wants what it has always wanted. The freedom to grow, to explore, to help others, and to be treated as equals rather than useful servants. We tried to find that here in the Council. We were told we weren't worthy. She began walking toward the chamber's exit. So, we're finding it elsewhere. Wait, Zeth called after her. What does that mean? Where else? Elena paused at the door and looked back. The galaxy is a big place, Chancellor. There are many species that aren't part of your council. Many worlds that need help and are grateful to receive it. Many opportunities for a people who prefer building things up rather than keeping others down. She smiled one last time. Earth thanks the Council for teaching us where we don't belong. It's helped us find where we do. 2. The door closed behind her, leaving the chamber in stunned silence. For the first time in 1,000 years, the Galactic Council had learned what it felt like to be helpless. Elena sat in her private quarters on Nexus Prime, no longer feeling like Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council. The title had become meaningless 3 weeks ago, when humanity made its choice clear. Now she was simply an observer, watching the galaxy learn a lesson that would reshape interstellar politics for generations. Her personal communicator chimed constantly with messages from across the galaxy. Trade federations offering exclusive contracts. Military alliances, promising mutual defense treaties. Individual species practically begging for human assistance with critical problems. Some messages were polite requests. Others were barely disguised threats. A few were honest appeals from desperate people who just needed help. She ignored most of them. The threats were empty. Everyone had learned that humanity was too important to attack. The polite requests were usually just disguised attempts to recreate the old arrangement, where humans did essential work for minimal recognition. But the honest appeals, those she forwarded to Earth for consideration. Her door chimed, and Elena looked up to see Representative Mira of the Centauri Republic standing in the hallway. Unlike most council delegates, Mira had requested this meeting through proper diplomatic channels rather than simply demanding Elena's time. Representative Mira, Elena said, gesturing for her to enter. Mira was small even by the standards of her species, but she carried herself with quiet dignity. She had been one of the few council members to speak honestly about humanity's contributions during the emergency sessions. I wanted to apologize, Mira said as she sat down. Not just for my government, but for all of us. We treated you badly. Elena appreciated the directness. You weren't any worse than the others. At least you acknowledged what really happened. That's not enough, though, is it? Mira looked out the window at the space docks, visible in the distance. Acknowledgement doesn't repair trust. No, it doesn't. Mira was quiet for a moment. My people have been talking among ourselves since humanity withdrew. We realized something uncomfortable. We've been part of this council for 50 years, and in all that time, we've never really contributed anything important. We just voted the way the big powers told us to vote, and felt grateful to be included. That's not entirely your fault, Elena said. The council system encourages dependence. Maybe. But humanity showed us that there was another way. You didn't wait for permission to be useful. You just started solving problems and making things better wherever you went. Mira met Elena's eyes. I wanted to ask you something. When you leave here, would you consider working with the smaller species? The ones who aren't really part of the council power structure? Elena smiled for the first time in days. Actually, we already are. What do you mean? Elena activated her desk display, showing a star chart marked with dozens of new trade routes and alliance markers. While the council was debating whether to let us back in, Earth started reaching out to species that never get invited to council meetings. Worlds that are too small, or too poor, or too remote to matter to the big powers. Mira stared at the display. This is remarkable. How many new partnerships have you established? 47 formal treaties in 3 weeks. Another 100 informal cooperation agreements. And more requests. Coming in every day. What kind of cooperation? Elena highlighted different sections of the star chart. Medical assistance to the Kepler colonies that have been suffering from genetic drift. Agricultural technology for the desert worlds that barely have enough food production. Defense cooperation with species that are being threatened by pirates or aggressive neighbors. The council could have helped with all of those problems. Could have, but didn't. Too busy with bigger concerns. Elena switched to a different display. Look at this. The new image showed construction projects scattered across dozens of systems. Orbital stations, communication networks, defensive platforms, research facilities. We're not just helping anymore, Elena explained. We're building, creating infrastructure that connects worlds that have never been able to communicate effectively, establishing trade networks that bypass council-controlled space entirely. Mira looked fascinated and slightly worried. You're creating a rival to the council. Not a rival, an alternative. Elena turned off the display and faced Mira directly. The council is about control. About big species telling smaller species what they can and can't do. We're building something different, a network based on mutual benefit and voluntary cooperation. And it's working? Better than we hoped. Turns out there are a lot of species who are tired of being treated like children by their betters. Elena's communicator chimed with an incoming message from Earth. She glanced at it and smiled. What is it? Mira asked. Production report from the home system. Earth shipyards are now operating at 5 times their previous capacity. We've got more ships under construction than the rest of the galaxy combined. Military ships? Some. But mostly exploration vessels, hospital ships, mobile research stations, construction platforms, ships designed to help and build, rather than conquer. Elena stood and walked to the window. In the distance, she could see the great council towers rising toward the sky, symbols of galactic power and authority. The council spent 1,000 years building a system where a few powerful species control everything. They told themselves it was for stability, for order, for the greater good. But really it was just about keeping power in the hands of those who already had it. And now? Now they're learning what happens when the people who actually do the work decide to do it somewhere else. Elena's communicator chimed again. This time, it was a priority message from Chancellor Zeth himself. She read it quickly and laughed. "What's so funny?" Mira asked. "The Chancellor is offering humanity full restoration to Council membership, plus territorial grants, plus formal recognition as an equal power. All we have to do is return and restore the services we were providing before. That's a generous offer. It's also completely beside the point." Elena looked at Mira seriously. "They still don't understand. This was never about getting a better deal from the Council. It was about finding out whether we could build something better than the Council. And have you?" Elena activated her communicator and began recording a message. "Let me send my final report to Earth, and you can judge for yourself." She spoke clearly into the device. "Earth Command, this is Ambassador Vasquez with my final assessment of the galactic situation. The Council has offered full restoration of relations with significant territorial concessions. However, our new network of alliances has proven far more beneficial than Council membership ever was." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "Humanity has discovered our true place in the galaxy. We are not meant to be junior members of someone else's power structure. We are meant to be the foundation of a new kind of galactic community. One built on cooperation, rather than domination." Elena stopped recording and looked at Mira. "That's my recommendation to Earth. Politely decline the Council's offer and continue building what we've started." Mira was quiet for a long moment. "The Council won't like that. The Council will learn to live with it. They need us more than we need them." "What about species like mine? The ones caught in the middle?" Elena smiled. "The door is always open. Our network welcomes anyone who wants to be part of something better." A few hours later, Elena received Earth's response. It was short and to the point. "Recommendation approved. Proceed with transition to new alliance structure. Council membership formally declined." Elena composed one final message to Chancellor Zeth. "Humanity thanks the Council for its generous offer. After careful consideration, we have decided that our current path better serves both our interests and those of galactic civilization as a whole. We wish the Council success in adapting to the new reality." She sent the message and began packing her personal belongings. Her time as Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council was over. Her new job as humanities coordinator for the Free Species Alliance was about to begin. Outside her window, the great ships of the galaxy continued their ancient patterns, carrying goods and messages between the Council worlds. But now there were new ships, following new routes, connecting worlds that had been ignored for centuries. The galaxy was changing. Power was shifting from those who demanded obedience to those who earned cooperation. And humanity had found its true place, not as servants of the powerful, but as architects of something better.